Barack Obama. For millions, his name still carries the glow of hope, the man who promised change, unity, and a new face for America on the global stage. But behind the speeches, the handshakes, and the carefully crafted image, lies a record that forces us to ask a question most avoid. Can a Nobel Peace Prize winner also be responsible for acts that some call war crimes? In 2009, less than a year into his presidency, Obama was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. The Nobel Committee praised his extraordinary efforts to strengthen international diplomacy and cooperation between peoples. It was a bold and unexpected choice. Even Obama himself admitted he was surprised. Many assumed this signaled the dawn of a more peaceful era. But almost immediately, the reality on the ground told a different story. U.S. drone strikes in Pakistan, Yemen, and Somalia began to escalate. Special operations forces quietly expanded into more countries. And behind closed doors, a secretive process of targeted killings, including of American citizens, was being refined. How does a leader celebrated for peace become the overseer of an expanding covert war? That's the contradiction we'll explore in this video, with facts, not opinion. We'll go beyond the headlines, using documented sources, declassified material, and credible journalism to piece together the other side of Barack Obama's legacy. Stay tuned, because the deeper we go, the more this story forces uncomfortable questions about morality, legality, and the true nature of political power in the modern world. By the end, you might see Obama's presidency in a way you've never considered before. If you believe in digging into the full truth, the parts history books leave out, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. That way you won't miss any of our deep dives into the hidden chapters of recent history. Because this isn't about tearing down or glorifying a leader. It's about confronting the record, a record that includes both soaring speeches and decisions that cost countless lives. And it all starts with a paradox. The moment a newly elected president became the face of global peace, while preparing to wage wars that would leave scars far beyond his 2 terms in office. If there is one area where Barack Obama's presidency broke historic ground, it was in the use of unmanned aerial drones for targeted killings. The technology promised precision. It was sold to the public as a way to eliminate threats without risking American lives. But the reality, documented by journalists, human rights groups, and even U.S. government leaks, tells a far darker story. According to the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, the number of U.S. drone strikes in Pakistan alone during Obama's first year matched the total number ordered during George W. Bush's entire presidency. And they didn't stop there. By the time Obama left office, drone strikes had been conducted in Pakistan, Yemen, and Somalia, many in regions where the United States had never officially declared war. The administration insisted these strikes were surgical and primarily targeted high-level terrorists. But independent investigations painted a different picture. The Bureau's data shows that between 384 and 807 civilians were killed in Pakistan from 2004 to 2016. With the majority of those deaths occurring under Obama's watch. Among them were children. One case drew particular outrage: the killing of Abdul Rahman al-Awlaki, a 16-year-old U.S. citizen, in Yemen in 2011. He was not accused of any crime. He was not the intended target. His only connection was that his father, Anwar al-Awlaki, had been killed 2 weeks earlier in a separate strike. When pressed on why the teenager was killed, then White House Press Secretary Robert Gibbs gave an answer that many saw as chillingly dismissive. Critics, including Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, argued that many of these killings violated both U.S. and international law. The strikes often relied on signature targeting, identifying individuals for killing based on patterns of behavior rather than confirmed identity. In some cases, the CIA didn't even know the names of those targeted. The secrecy was near total. Civilian casualty reports were classified. Independent journalists were often blocked from entering strike zones. Families of victims were left without answers or any chance of legal recourse. For Obama, drones became a defining tool of counterterrorism. For many outside the United States, they became a symbol of fear, the constant buzzing in the sky, the possibility that death could come at any moment without warning. And at the center of it all was not just a policy but a system, one that would soon gain a name: the disposition matrix, or as many called it, the kill list. That's where we turn next. In May 2012, the New York Times published an investigation that stunned much of the world. It revealed that every week, senior U.S. officials would meet in a secure room to review a list of individuals marked for death, a list personally approved by President Barack Obama. This was not a relic of the Bush era. It was a system built, refined, and expanded during Obama's presidency. It was called the disposition matrix. In plain terms, it was a database of suspected terrorists, insurgents, and even unidentified individuals whose patterns of behavior fit a profile deemed threatening to the United States. The president and his advisors would examine mugshots, biographies, and intelligence reports before authorizing strikes, often via drone, anywhere in the world. This process was extraordinary for two reasons. First, the level of personal involvement by Obama himself. He was, according to the New York Times, deeply engaged in deciding who lived and who died. Second, the criteria for inclusion on the list often relied on incomplete or circumstantial intelligence. In many cases, the government did not know the names of the individuals targeted. Even more controversial was the fact that American citizens could be, and were, placed on the list. Anwar al-Awlaki, killed in Yemen in 2011, was the first U.S. citizen publicly known to have been targeted and killed without trial. 2 weeks later, his 16-year-old son was also killed in a separate strike. Neither was afforded any form of due process. Supporters argued that the kill list was a necessary tool in the fight against terrorism, a way to act quickly before threats could materialize. Critics, including legal scholars and human rights organizations, saw it as a dangerous concentration of power in the hands of a single individual, bypassing judicial oversight and eroding the principles of international law. The secrecy surrounding the program made independent verification nearly impossible. Decisions were made in classified meetings, based on classified intelligence, resulting in classified operations. There was no public record, no court review, and almost no accountability. What began as a counterterrorism measure after September 11 had, under Obama, become an institutionalized, global assassination program. And it wasn't the only foreign policy decision to have lasting, destabilizing consequences. The next chapter in this story unfolds in North Africa, in a country whose collapse still reverberates today, Libya. In early 2011, Libya was caught in the wave of uprisings known as the Arab Spring. Protests against Muammar Gaddafi's 42-year rule quickly escalated into an armed rebellion. Reports emerged that Gaddafi's forces were moving toward Benghazi, and Western leaders warned of an impending massacre. The United Nations Security Council passed Resolution 1973, authorizing all necessary measures to protect civilians. The resolution did not authorize regime change. It was intended as a humanitarian mission. But under President Obama's direction, the United States joined a NATO-led intervention that quickly moved beyond civilian protection to active military support for rebel forces. American warplanes, drones, and cruise missiles struck Libyan government positions. NATO forces provided crucial intelligence, logistics, and air cover that helped rebels advance. By October 2011, Gaddafi was captured and killed. Obama declared the mission a success, saying it showed what the international community could achieve without putting large numbers of American troops on the ground. But the story did not end there. With Gaddafi gone, Libya descended into chaos. Rival militias fought for control. The central government collapsed. Armed groups, including ISIS, established footholds. Weapons from Gaddafi's arsenal spread across North Africa and the Middle East, fueling conflicts in Mali, Syria, and beyond. By 2014, Libya was effectively a failed state, split between competing governments and warlords. The country became a hub for human trafficking, with horrific reports of migrants being sold in open-air slave markets, a reality documented by CNN in 2017. Critics argued that the US and NATO had repeated the same mistakes made in Iraq, removing a dictator without a clear plan for the aftermath. Obama himself later acknowledged this. In a 2016 interview with The Atlantic, he called failing to plan for, the day after, in Libya the worst mistake of his presidency. Supporters of the intervention maintained that it prevented a massacre in Benghazi and reflected America's commitment to protect civilians. But detractors see it as a textbook example of mission creep, a humanitarian mandate morphing into a regime change operation with disastrous consequences. Libya's collapse was not an isolated event. It was part of a broader expansion of U.S. military and covert operations during Obama's presidency, an expansion that, combined with a crackdown on government whistleblowers, would raise new questions about transparency, accountability, and the balance between security and freedom. That's where we turn next. Barack Obama campaigned on promises of transparency and government accountability. But once in office, his administration developed a reputation for aggressively pursuing those who exposed classified information, even when that information revealed government misconduct. Under the Espionage Act of 1917, Obama's Justice Department prosecuted more whistleblowers than all previous U.S. presidents combined. High-profile cases included Chelsea Manning, an Army intelligence analyst who leaked hundreds of thousands of classified documents to WikiLeaks, revealing civilian casualties, diplomatic cables, and evidence of potential war crimes. Manning was sentenced to 35 years in prison, the longest sentence ever given to a whistleblower in the United States, before Obama commuted it in 2017. Then came Edward Snowden, a former NSA contractor who exposed the scale of the U.S. government's global surveillance programs in 2013. His leaks showed how the NSA collected phone records of millions of Americans and monitored communications worldwide, often without warrants. Facing charges under the Espionage Act, Snowden fled to Russia, where he remains in exile. Another case was Daniel Hale, a former Air Force intelligence analyst who leaked classified documents on the U.S. drone program. His disclosures confirmed that in one targeted operation, nearly 90% of those killed were not the intended targets. Hale was later sentenced to 45 months in prison. Supporters of Obama's actions argued that national security required protecting classified information and that leaks could endanger lives. Critics countered that the administration's approach chilled investigative journalism and shielded potential wrongdoing from public scrutiny. Meanwhile, the military campaigns continued. By the end of Obama's second term, the U.S. was involved in bombing or military operations in 7 countries: Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya, Yemen, Somalia, and Pakistan. Many of these conflicts operated under the legal framework of the 2001 Authorization for Use of Military Force, a law passed after September 11 that successive administrations used to justify a widening scope of military action. This combination of expanded military reach, secretive targeted killing programs, and aggressive prosecution of whistleblowers left a complicated legacy. For some, Obama will always be the eloquent statesman who inspired hope and broke racial barriers. For others, he was a skilled politician who maintained, and in some cases intensified, the machinery of war and surveillance built after September 11. History's verdict will depend on how much weight future generations give to each side of that legacy. But one thing is certain: the image of the peace president is only part of the story. The rest is written in classified memos, drone strike coordinates, and the testimonies of those who tried to tell the public what was happening in their name.